Good morning, sixth grade. We're going to keep moving on with our lesson on motion. I hope you guys all did the lab yesterday. I was getting a lot of emails with your labs done, so awesome job. One thing I wanted to point out is some of you seemed a little confused with the way you would label what you figured out yesterday. So for the speed that we figured out yesterday, we have to understand that you have to use what units are being measured. So the first thing, our distance, what was that measured in? Because it wasn't miles. That's right, it was inches. And then what was our time frame? It wasn't in an hour, so it wasn't miles per hour. It was in what? Seconds. So our actual way, the way that we would label it is inches per second. So if you think of it this way, I know, let's say that if it went 60 inches per second, it's telling me that over the course of 1 second, that ball is traveling 60 inches. Now that makes a little more sense. If we were saying it was 60 miles per hour, that might get a little confusing. So remember that when you're labeling these things, you have to use whatever unit you are actually measuring or testing with. So yesterday's lab, it was in inches per second. All right. So we're going to move on. We're going to start talking about some pretty cool things. We're going to be doing, which I always think everything's cool, so just go with me, humor me. We're going to be talking about laws of motion, and we're going to go through Sir Isaac Newton's 3 laws of motion over the next week and a half. And along with that, we're going to be doing some labs. I'm going to be asking you to do some things at home and explain to me what's happening. And I'll be showing you some demonstrations on our lessons. But for today, we're just going to start talking about who Isaac Newton is and why his works were so important to modern day science. All right, so medieval scientists believed that all things tend to slow down and come to a rest, which is true, okay? So if I was to roll a ball down a hill, eventually that ball would come to a rest. They understood that, but these scientists sometimes had wrong conclusions based on why that ball would slow down or why it would stop. In the 1600s, this guy right here, this handsome fella, Galileo Galilei, he was an astronomer, but he was also a scientist, that he studied many different things. But he discovered that, contrary to what the scientists of his day believed, a moving object does not come to rest unless there is an outside force that was acting on that object, meaning something had to stop whatever was in motion, which was true, okay? A lot of scientists thought that all things just happened to come to a rest, but they didn't realize that there was an outside force that was acting upon it. All right, let's look at Sir Isaac Newton. He's another handsome fellow. Don't you wish that hairstyle would come back for you guys? Thank goodness it doesn't. All right, Sir Isaac Newton, he lived between 1642 and 1727, so a long time ago. He continued what Galileo had begun to study about how and why things move, and he formulated 3 laws of motion. We have the first law of motion that states that anything at rest will stay at rest unless an outside force acts upon it, or anything in motion will stay in motion unless an outside force acts upon that. He also came up with his second law of motion that has to do with mass and acceleration and how that makes a difference in the amount of force that is needed to get it to move. And don't worry, we will go over all of this in detail for each of those laws. And then the third law, which is probably my favorite one because we're going to be doing some fun tests with that one, and one that I wish that we were in class to do this with because that's when we build rockets. This one is that it's the law of action and reaction, meaning if I want something to go in one direction, there has to be an opposite but equal reaction there. So we're going to be talking about those three laws. But we're going to start off today with who Isaac Newton was. So for your assignment today, you're going to click on the link to Brain Pop. And if you are in Miss Dunn's homeroom, you are going to insert the code for her homeroom that's on my on my webpage. If you are in Gil's homeroom, make sure you input the code for Gil's homeroom so you can get your assignment. You're going to watch the video on Sir Isaac Newton, and then you're going to fill out the graphic organizer that is on there. I only want you to fill out 3 things that you learned about Isaac Newton from that video. You don't need to fill in all the, I think there's like 6 of them. You only need to fill in 3. Please follow the instructions for what you need to do. If you don't have a BrainPop account, when you input that code, you'll just have to sign up as a new user. You create your own username and password. But from here on out, we will be using BrainPop every once in a while. I know math probably will, and history probably will as well. So once you sign up with one username, one password, that's all you need for any classes that are assigned to you. You'll just get a code for your class. Okay? All right, guys. If you have any questions, send me an email or leave a comment, and I'll help you out with that. All right. Bye.